Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood one conversation at a time. I'm Zack.
I'm Joe.
I'm Josh.
And we are JJ and Z. We are a cookie. Who's the filling and who's the cookies? You decide.
I am the palest out of us three, so probably I am the white part of the Oreo. Everyone loves the cream part. No one likes the...
Yeah, but you can't have the cookie without, it's not an Oreo without the cookies, or else it'd just be like a vat of cream.
I stand corrected.
You're sitting.
I'm slouching.
Well, slouching is a bad habit, and so is sin. And we're going to talk today about 3 sins outside of lust, because we've talked about lust quite a bit on this channel, because it's something a lot of men struggle with. But us men struggle with all 7 of the deadly sins.
The first thing you need to know is that we as humans are going to face temptation. Not if, but when. That's all it's a matter of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And death and taxes.
Yeah, death, taxes, and temptation. and I think even there's like particular ways that we as men encounter these, because there's different ways that each of the sins manifest themselves and like how they can affect people. And I think even too, they can affect like men and women differently. Just like lust can take on a different form for both men and women. What's our first sin on the docket there, Joe? What are we talking about?
We're going to talk about greed or money.
Greed. Yes, the idolization of money and material things.
Yeah, one of the
I'm not
lies
sure if that's an actual definition. I just threw that out there, but
one thing that can hit home for a lot of people is we are told, mainstream, that fulfillment in our lives is linked to how much we have, how much we own, and hopefully in this discussion we're going to break out of that mindset.
We as men heavily measure ourselves by how much we own.
Yeah.
I remember talking in one men's group once when we were in college about the idea of modesty. And so like everyone always thinks like the sexual angle, like, modesty, like cover up type of thing. And, that's one angle, especially, for women sometimes, just like cover up and, because without a doubt, the woman is, the more beautiful of the 2 species. I mean, not going to lie.
I disagree.
That's the way
I
it
disagree.
is. But like for us as men, yes, that's a problem. Like, a problem. Don't like throw out like a shirt that's barely a shirt at the gym type of thing. But I think we talked about how like immodesty can come in different ways, particularly for men. And one of the ways we talked about is this idea of money, of like flaunting your wealth around. Of like, look at this fancy car that I have. Like, why does a man really need, like a guy who's just commuting to work, really need like a car that can go 200 miles an hour? Like you don't. And or like, does a rich guy really need like 3 private jets? Or I don't know, it's like having those things that you don't need, but you have them to prove to other people, and especially other men, and be like, look how much I make.
Yeah. Type
of thing. So I think that's a big temptation for men, is to use material objects as a way to kind of like, prove to other people, like to, I don't know, puff out their chest a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, money in itself, it's not, it's a neutral thing. First off, like it's just currency is what it is. But there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But we're talking about like the love of money, like, and when that happens and overtakes your soul, it's amazing what happens to a man when they start to pursue wealth, and only that, a lot of things that were once important to their lives, family, ministry, time with God, most importantly, and their friendships kind of all go by the wayside. Even like their mountaintop, as we've talked about before, goes by the wayside. They sell out.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes when we idolize things, it kind of forms us in its image, in its identity, right? So like when we're trying to, idolize money, wealth, accumulation. What's the acclamation? Is that it? What's the word I'm thinking? Accumulation of material possessions and things. Wow, I just totally destroyed
That's
my.
okay. That's like when I
trying
try to
to
say aesthetic.
Start over. I'll edit it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, I think oftentimes with when we idolize things, it forms us in its own image. And so, oftentimes with money, when we want to accumulate material possessions and things, and that kind of becomes like the pinnacle of our creation, we tend to be molded in the sense of like, well, now I'm not going to care about other people because I'm only going to care about gain. I'm only going to care about wealth. I'm going to harm people. I may throw other people away. I may like live my life for that goal of just achieving achieving wealth and things, as opposed to really caring about others. And that becomes like almost like an identity in a sense of that. Because I think about when we idolize God, like we tend to love people because God is love. So when you try to put other things in that place, it's like you're molding yourself in a different image in a sense, because we were made to reflect an image that which we are created. That makes, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but
No, I agree. It's and kind of going back to Joe's point along with that a little bit, is this idea is that money in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, just like sex and lust is not a bad thing. Money itself is probably not as good as the marriage union, but this idea is that it is made for a purpose and for a good. It's just when it's used, when greed is the twisting of that, of the putting it above God, rather than it being a way to get closer to God. But you can use money in certain ways to get closer to God by helping use it to serve others, serve the church, like church and things like that. But like when it's twisted and it's used as an idol, as Josh was saying, like it forms us badly. Where we start worshiping a created thing rather than the creator, which is all of these things are eventually, we're gonna, like, as you guys listen to us, all these things boil down to idolatry. Like all of these sins are some form of idolatry, just with a different object. But yeah, I think greed. Yeah, it's taking something that should be just a means to an end and starting to treat it as an end in itself. Because money's only for the sake of buying something or buying a service or feeding your family, putting a roof over your head. Like it's not supposed to be in and of itself something to be loved or valued or worshipped, type of thing, or like the centerpiece of your life.
Before we move on to the next one, I'll reiterate the lie that I brought up. Fulfillment in life is tied to how much we own. Replace that with the truth, and that'll come like with the other sins that we'll talk about. The truth comes from 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So,
I think we should each talk about a way that we've personally struggled with greed.
I agree.
So I can go first if we want.
Okay.
And I know this is something that I've struggled with a lot in the past few years, and thankfully Exodus 90 is helping me with this a little bit. So greed manifests itself in different ways for different people. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to be greedy. But for me, it definitely was, in sports to a degree. This is going to sound weird, but it's in sports. I mean, me and Joe were used to doing a sport that, you don't really need a lot of stuff to do swimming. You need a suit and you need goggles, but as long as you can see and as long as you have something covering, you can swim. And it's really mostly about you. There's some accessories and stuff. You need like a bag and things like that. But when I started playing sports like tennis or golf or even pickleball, where like the equipment actually makes a really big difference in terms of like what type of racket you're using, what type of strings you're putting in it, how tight they are, like what shape they are, like what material they're made out of, like the grips that go on the racket. Like there's just so much that goes into this, or like getting fitted for clubs in golf, the type of golf ball you're using. There's just so much, and there's so much commercialism in it. And it's easy to get sucked into that rabbit hole. And then when you like thinking of like, oh, I need to upgrade everything. Or like there's this level of, I struggled with one, I felt like I needed to upgrade my stuff to prove that I was that good. It's like like, you know, in order to prove that I'm good, I need to have like high level stuff so that high level players will recognize I'm using high level equipment. And then like, so there's that trap, number one. And then number two is you start to get into this mental space where you're thinking that like if you're playing badly or you're not succeeding, it's because you don't have the right stuff. Like you don't have the right equipment. Like you don't have the right, if I, like I'd be better if I only just had this instead of this, or if I only just had that instead of that. If I only had a racket that was heavier, or a racket that was bigger, or a racket that was like this, that, or the other thing, or a golf club or whatever. Like, and they feed that, like commercialism feeds that, obviously, you know, all these companies that make this equipment want you to believe these lies. And I mean, they're not lies necessarily, but they're fueling them more to get you to buy more, to replace things, to stuff you don't need. So I got very much caught in that trap, and also not willing to admit that it's just like, hey, you need to practice more, and or, you know, that type of thing. You need to actually, you know, actually play and like work at it and stop, you know, and blame yourself for your problems, and not, you know, or just a bad day, or just that you're not like as good as that guy. It's not that like he has better stuff than you. He's just better at it than you are. So there was a point, like I'm not gonna lie, like I literally at one point owned over 25 tennis rackets. Like a lot. Like it was a problem. I look at it now and it's and I see how much of a problem it was. And you only use one or two. That's it. Like, but luckily I've been able to get past that. Sold all of them except like a handful, like, and I only really use one. So, but that's like, and then that was just one example. Like I didn't get as bad in any other sports, but like that was my example with greed. And this all like obviously costs a lot of money, and it was a lot of money I was wasting, and like a lot of equipment and material that was being wasted. And yeah, so that's like kind of what my personal struggle with greed was. It wasn't necessarily like hoarding money as much as it was like hoarding stuff I did not need, or like relying too much on the stuff, almost giving the stuff too much value in that idle type of way, like minor idle type of way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's been my experience with greed, a little bit, but luckily it's getting better. So
yeah, and then just kind of piggybacking off that, I'd say that's very similar to my personal experience with greed as well. I mean, you can just see everything that, you know, this whole space that I have because of it. And, you know, having guitars and having plugins on my computer, and having a gaming computer that I built and convinced myself I need better parts for, and, you know, I mean, everything. I'm kind of a materialistic person in the sense of like I do that a lot. Like I try to fill that void with stuff sometimes, but having a family and a wife has really, you know, caused that to slow down. I think that was a big part of the beginning of our married life, was kind of working through that with my wife and I, because I'm more of a spender and she's a hardcore saver. She never spends anything. And so like that was something we kind of worked through, and I had to realize that like, oh, like I am materialistic and I don't need these things. Like it is kind of a sense of greed and all that. And like everything that you were saying, like convincing myself, oh, I will sound better with a nicer guitar, or I'll make better stuff with better recording software, better plugins, better whatever. And then all of a sudden my music is going to sound a lot better. Like, or having a space, having acoustic foam on the wall, having better heads on my drum set, you know, like everything, you know. And so I've been working through that, and yeah, and that's one of the beauty, the good things about marriage, is that it is really sanctifying in the sense of like all these things kind of bubble up to the surface, and it can, and you know, that you have to kind of work through, because now I have a family, right? So I can't be spending a lot of money on, especially so I don't have a job, so I can't like spend money on these things and all that. And I will say it was never a bad thing. Like I was never spending money I didn't have. I never bankrupt us. I would, if we had necessities, like we have savings, like all that, like I'm would never be like that. But just over the years, it's stuff it's slowing down in the sense of my purchasing and all that, as I've grown more and have realized that that's not necessarily a good thing.
Like Josh, I'm a musician as well, and ever since I started playing at church about 2 years ago, just give or take a couple months, I had been on this quest to try to better my tone, to looking at gear. Like it's always a fun hobby to take a look and seeing what other people I know are have bought or what they use as inspiration. And that's what like it always started out as like a form of inspiration, because my dad had bought me guitars in the past, and I myself, now that I've been working for the better half of 10 years now, it's been good to be able to buy those things. And like I said, like Josh said, never bankrupted myself, never spend more than like than I out of my means. But there has been a couple lingering, like those little ticks of tick of an idea that's like, oh, I'm going to be so much better, and like people are going to hear me, and I'm going to be like all these things that I want, like people are going to notice, and I'm going to get like all this clout and stuff like that. But no. Like, truth be told, like I'm still convincing myself of this, is that when people hear it in front of a microphone, it's going to sound exactly the same to them as it was with that other guitar that you had or something. Like, so just get over it. And it's still a thing that I'm trying to intentionally like frame my mind to be like, okay, you don't need like anything else. And I know I just talked about getting another pedal. Like it's something that I genuinely want. And I'm not an impulsive spender. I want to think about it, pray about it. Of course, those little ticks of ideas come in, like you'd be so much better if you had that too. So like that's a struggle.
Yeah, I'm incredibly impulsive. Like I'm the type of person that, like, if I see a burger and I'm hungry, like I'll go and get that burger if it's like a commercial or something. Like I'm totally that way. not as much now, but like yeah.
Well, I mean, our society makes it so hard.
Yes,
I'm very impulsive in that sense. Like if I'm like in my brain, I'm like I want this, and I can afford it. I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna get it.
because you technically can.
Yeah. I mean, like in our society, we can click one button and like get something ordered, which is terrible. I think that's the worst thing on Amazon. Like one click buying is the worst thing ever. It's so playing into people who struggle with this. But even like, you know, you guys talking about, I had a thought and I lost it. Like you guys all each buying stuff in myself to improve performance. Oh yeah, now I remember. It's hard because it's so easy to buy something because it doesn't really require much work, but like to practice requires time and effort and like all this stuff. So like that temptation to be like, oh, if I just buy this thing, then I'll be better and I won't have to spend hours of practice instead. Or like, you know, practice isn't always as fun as even though in the long run it could be. But like we all think that like getting packages at the door is fun, which it is. There's that little hit of dopamine, but like yeah, I don't know. It's hard. And for anyone listening that's having a similar struggle, always remember that yes, the tools matter to a degree, but it is the person you wielding the tools that's the more important. Like the talent that you have as a whatever, it's a musician or an athlete or whatever is far more important. Like the greats will make anything work. You know, like the greats will sound great even if they don't have great stuff, or like the greats will play great even if they don't have great stuff. Like, you know, it's just.
So you're not great.
Nope. No.
is the lesson to this?
No. The lesson is you don't think you're great if you're listening, but you are great, and you need to believe it.
Yeah, you just got practice, guys.
The warrior, not the weapon.
Yeah. Literally set like a half hour out of your day to devote to that thing.
Plus, you don't want anyone looking at you like for example, with you guys, you don't want anybody looking up there and being like, that guy sounds great because he has such and such guitar, rather than being like, wow, that guy sounds great because he's talented and he's good. And
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, if you practice for like 30 minutes a day or something like that, you know, or even like just 30 minutes a week. There's 52 weeks in a year. You'll be that 1% better each week. You'll be 52% better than you were the previous year.
Right.
There's so much more we could unpack, but we should probably move on to sin number 2.
We have the sin of pride.
Pride. Ooh.
I feel like we could dedicate a whole episode on this topic.
Oh yeah.
Pride. So we talked about how money, like, greed was the idolization of money and material things. pride is the idolization of self, essentially.
Yeah.
Of thinking one to be above God.
Yeah. Pride comes in different forms. For one thing, the lie is there's two different types that I've came to. The first one is don't admit that you struggle because people will think that you're weak. Act like you have it all together and things will just work out. And then the second lie is, look at what you have done and all you have accomplished with your hands only. People should be singing your praises. Those are the two lies. Don't admit your struggle, and then that look what I've done mentality.
Yeah, pride is a funny, it is a funny thing, and it would take a lot to unpack. But this, the taking sole responsibility for everything you am and are, even though like God's the one who clearly makes you who you are and what you do, and once again making yourself God essentially, or your own God. And I guess also just the resistance. I guess this is the one that I've always had trouble with, is the resistance to humility, like the resistance to being humbled type of thing. I guess I'm just gonna dive right into the personal experience right now, because this is, I feel like, harder to talk about broadly. I'm gonna talk about sports again, because sports, as everyone's gonna find out, is like the way I relate to so many things. And I'm gonna talk about tennis again, and people are gonna be like, why does he play tennis? It's so bad for him. But for all those listening, my relationship with it has improved. But in sports, I definitely felt like I was defining myself a lot through my own success in athletics. I had been a swimmer, which I thought like had a healthy relationship with swimming. But then when I like got out of swimming and like graduated and stuff, I started trying to find my worth in like these accomplishments. So like this idea of like not just playing, but like winning, of like putting myself above another person, like beating. It was more about, instead of playing the game, it was more about beating the other person, which yes, you have to try to win in sports, but like when it becomes all about that, about like asserting yourself above other people, that like starts to be tough. Like it starts to really, like it really started messing with my mind, in my soul a little bit, because then like when you get beat, like it's not pretty. Like you feel belittled. Like I was very resistant, and I'll talk about this more when we get to anger at some point. But like, like my worth, like I was putting my worth in my accomplishments, which is, I guess, like the definition of pride. Like I was putting my worth in my accomplishments, so that I was not handling it well anytime I didn't accomplish, or I didn't win, or I didn't do well. Like, and so that's where my struggle started coming from. And I like always walked in thinking I was the best, or I had to be the best. And then I had to beat everybody. I had to prove that. Like anytime I was, especially with my roommate, like my best friend in the world, like we would just get so competitive. And like in the end, I hated that. Like I hated that I was getting so competitive, that I was getting so riled up. Like I had to prove something. Like somehow I was defining myself by how many people I beat, and that if I didn't, that I was like a failure, that I wasn't worth anything, which is just generally pride. But anyway, that's just like a brief gloss of like my encounter with pride. Well, I mean, also then ended up bleeding over into my job, like thinking like if I didn't succeed, I wasn't worth anything, or if I didn't provide something. So instead of seeing myself as like a child of God, and like that my worth comes, or even my accomplishment comes, not just through, like prestige or success or popularity or approval or whatever it might be. So I started defining myself through that. So I ended up getting in that whole rabbit hole before I ended up, having anxiety a lot out of pride, because I was defining myself via the wrong things. So, but now things are getting better, I hope.
There you go. Thanks for sharing that, Zach.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for affirming it.
Yeah. I guess my experience with pride kind of comes again with me, like music. Like I think that's how I kind of define things and relate to the world. Just thinking that, and it's really like kind of ironic, because being convinced that like Claire and I are the best worship leaders like in our local area has kind of caused us to me to step on people's toes a little bit. And that's an area that I've really been trying to shine a light on, because there's a lot of like kind of puffed up people when it comes to music and the arts, and obviously sports and all that. So well, anything that's like talent based. And so I like other people who are in the same world as we are, so say other singers, other musicians who will play similar events that Claire and I do. We've kind of wedged them out because of us and the way that like the people that we know who like us and all of that. And so whenever we have an opportunity to work with them, sometimes I will not be as kind because I'll be convinced that we kind of know a little bit more, or that we may be a little more experienced, or that maybe we might be better in just like our quality of whatever. And that just has led to some negative experiences. And so I think that's one area that the Lord has been calling me to be more humble and to to really work on that, and to foster better relationships with those that are kind of in the same realm, in the same field. And it's ironic because it's praise and worship music. So like here we are like trying to serve the church, and play music, which we do regularly and love it and enjoy it. But like here I am being an asshole to people because I because I'm convinced I'm better than them. So it's funny.
Yeah. Well.
And honestly, like I don't really like stuff with sports. Like I don't really puff up that much, and like I'm not really an athlete. And like honestly, like this is probably the one world that I do that. Like I'm not really that prideful, I don't think. But like when it comes to like music and like the stuff that I'm convinced I'm good at, and really that's it. So like, and that's kind of the area. And it's just I'm not being a good servant, a good steward.
I first fell for the sin of pride in a big way, at least back in high school swimming. I was swimming at that point since I was about 8 years old, so I had quite a few years on me, and it was great. But once I entered like the high school realm and did that at the same time as YMCA swimming, I was doing two things hand in hand. But during freshman year, I wanted to just devote it to high school swimming because of the sin of pride, and I didn't want to admit it. It's because I had a lot more years over a lot of the other boys on my team, is that I showed a lot of talent there, and it made me very egotistical. It made me very puffing up my chest in a lot of ways. And I should have taken myself out of that situation after freshman year of high school. I should have just devoted to wives. I mean, for one thing, it would have benefited me skill wise, but more importantly, it would have benefited my relationship with the sport, and also probably my my peers in high school too, because I think I alienated a lot of people just by what's the best way to put this? I think I alienated a lot of people just because in those first 2 years of high school, I puffed up my chest a lot. I learned my ways on my own junior and senior year by kind of doing a 180 and being a lot more, not sullen, but just less talkative. And people just didn't know what to do with those two extremes, it seems. And a lot of that at the beginning was because of the sin of pride, and maybe even being sullen and less talkative was because of that too. Like they just don't understand me and stuff like that. Like it was a really bad mentality, just to puff myself, because I think what ultimately did it in those first 2 years, and the other 2 years too that I continued with high school swim, was because I got a ton of compliments in school. I got a ton of praise and stuff like that, and that's what did it in for me. And I, for one, never want to be at that extreme ever again. I don't think at all it's been like that ever. Not that I can know, but I felt a tremendous amount of guilt for a long, long time. And a lot of good relationships happened at that point, but I know I was young, and It's not the same. But even when I get invited to go to stuff like that again, I can't help but cower at, like, they're gonna talk crap about me because of the fact that I was this way back then. And I can't think like that. I know, like, what we're all thinking. I can't have that mentality, but still it plagues me a little bit.
We as men, I think we all just fall into pride when it comes to, as we all talked about, the stuff we're good at, and defining ourselves through our activity. Like, that's the thing us as men, as we've talked about, is like we define ourselves through what we do and like our physicality. But in that we can be prideful, because then we start defining ourselves too much. And so there's always a virtue that helps to cure a vice. And so in this case, it's humility. God says, take, the seat, not at the head, but at the end. Because if you start at the end, you can always, go up. But if you start at the top, you can only go down. And that's, I don't know. I've been reflecting on that a lot when it comes to pride. This idea is like, I'm not going to walk into like a sporting area and assume I'm the best. Because if I assume I'm the best, I'm only going to be humbled.
Yeah.
Like, I'm only going to be
knocked down.
not even humbled, humiliated.
Yeah.
Like, but if you start, at least even in the middle, like, you're at least like, well, I'm not the best, I'm not the worst, and if it goes great, good. If it goes bad, nah. Like, I don't know.
What helped me is I remember when I saw Top Gun, when Maverick says, they asked, like, they asked him, are you good? And he says something that is a statement that meets you right in the middle. He says, I can hold my own. That shows a little bit of confidence in yourself, but at the same time, humility too. It doesn't, like, it doesn't puff up your chest, but at the same time, it doesn't knock you like your own self down. I can hold my own. I just like that statement.
I wouldn't have called Maverick an overall humble character, but
no,
I do like
is
the
not.
statement.
But that one statement in isolation, yes.
Yeah, that phrase, I get it, but he was pretty proud himself. And because we didn't mention it, the virtue that helps with greed is charity. So instead of using your money for yourself or for status or obsessing over it, use it to help other people. To serve others. So that's the brief on charity, everyone.
Those lies I told you guys about, don't admit your struggle because people think you're weak, and then lie too. Look at what you've done, all of you accomplished. I myself did both of those in my example I was telling you before. I urge you, whoever's listening, watching, to replace that with the truth, like I did before with money or greed. The truth with the word. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. That would be from Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. And then one more truth from 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
We're going to stop there with greed and pride, and we're going to talk about two more of the deadly sins and our own personal experience of them and how to get past them next time. So stay tuned. We're on a series now.
Ever since, like, time immemorial, Satan has tried to use, all these temptations that, and we all struggle with some more than others, temptation to destroy the souls of men. Satan has tried to, even though he knows that you are a child of God and he can't take you, he will do everything to like sway your mind, to discourage or distract you. And the way to get out of that is, when you are tempted, look for a way out, of course. But in doing that, God has promised he will provide a way. So even just, there's power in the name of Jesus. Just say, like, when you feel that, saying Jesus' name or reciting like one of your favorite Bible verses, just declaring that actually spoken word, that at least helped me.
Yeah. And actively practice the virtues of charity and humility. Give rather than take, and then lower yourself in a healthy way rather than trying to puff yourself up. So this week was pretty good, actually. So Exodus 90 update, still hard but still good. Definitely Mondays are always the hardest part, because Sunday you get some indulgence, and then Monday, for whatever reason, I've just always been having struggle. It was a different kind of struggle this time. This time it was more kind of like a deflated, like feeling deflated, maybe like semi-depressed, and like wanting to indulge in the stuff, like the media or the food or whatever it is. Did not. and which was good. I shook it off by the end. Like by the end of the day, it was good. But yeah, it's still hard. It was one of those days I'm like, I really do not want to take a cold shower today, but that was, that's part of it. And those are the days that are most important. You got to do it anyway. And as I said, the day turned out good. And there are a lot of positive effects that are coming. I am seeing some changes in like my personality and like in a good way. Like I'm spending a lot more time and getting a lot more enjoyment out of being with people and like seeing the value of being with people. And I'm seeking out more being with people and being fulfilled through people and God and prayer. But like, like prioritizing people a lot, which is really good. You gents included, on this podcast. But yeah, a lot of other people have been talking to lots of friends and so just love seeing that. Like even in some of my relationships with stuff like sports activities and stuff that I do, I'm starting to reorder itself. I'm not taking it so seriously, I'm not being so intense. I'm not treating it as like an object to fulfill me. I'm treating it just as like a thing to do for fun, which has been good. Like, so just that type of thing. The reordering is happening. Obviously there's still a lot of work to do, but there are positive side effects, but it is hard. So outside of that, great week, especially over the weekend. We had our first young adult ministry leader meeting over the weekend, which went really well. We had a lot of people show up. And so we had like some formation. We discussed like the ministry in our diocese and like what we want to do with it and like what the diocese could do better, like what the ministers could do better, like some ideas for promoting and like things like that. And then like we went out, all the group went out to eat afterwards. And so there was like good camaraderie, there was good collaboration, which was all really good. It was like made me feel good. And we had like plans for like more, which was awesome. I was really nervous about it going in. Just, it's that same nervous when you plan something and you just want it to go right. And, so you're nervous that it will or won't. But so yeah, that went really well. So that was good. I went this weekend. I went to go watch a meet for Marywood. So the team I used to coach and that me and Joe both used to swim for way back in the day. Their last dual meet was this weekend and it was in Bethlehem. And nice. So I decided that I was gonna go watch because it was the closest one to where I live. And so I just wanted to go out there and see them swim. And when I showed up, they spotted me pretty quickly and they literally shouted my name in the building to like across the pool. So it felt really an excitement, which was really good. I'm like really I don't know, it makes you feel like you did something right, like if they're excited to see you even though like I left, like which
you make quite an impact.
And I wanted to go to show them too, like I didn't leave because of them, like I didn't leave because of the team. I left because God was calling me to do something else. So it was really good to see them, really excited to interact with them and their parents. Like got to see their parents too, and they talked to me. I had to explain to a few people who didn't know about the whole not going to law school development. I had to explain that story again. But yeah, so it was really good. I was really glad I got to see them and find out also how they're doing with school and swim and everything like that. And what else? Yeah, I mean, one thing that was not fun that happened is that I got my utility bill, so like my electric bill, like last week at the end of the week on Friday, I think, and it was like over double what I normally pay, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? Like, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. I know electricity is going up, but this is crazy. Yep. So I had to get on the phone with our power company. And they're like, there's like a 90-minute wait. So we're going to call you back. Or like, great. So this whole time I found out from other people that there was like an error in billing and that there was like the system like went on the fritz. So they had to bill people based on estimated usage versus like actual usage, and that they would make up for it like in the next billing cycle when everything got fixed. And so I'm like, okay, cool, that's just what happened to me, and it'll just be fixed in the next bill. And so they finally call back, and I explained to them what happened and how things don't match up, and like my usage and like versus that aren't the same, and then my bill's way too high. And I just assume it's probably because of the thing that happened, right? And they look at my thing, and it's like, yes, that did happen, but it actually happened last month and we undercharged you. And this is like to make up for that. And my one before that was already like the second highest bill I've ever had. So electricity has gone through the roof in my area of the country/state, and I was particularly not happy. So hence, I only have one lamp on in my house right now. Sorry for everyone who has to look at my grainy appearance, but my house is 4 degrees colder, and I have far less lights on. So yeah, that was, and I'm like thinking to myself, it's like, great, I have to exit. It's 90 now. This too. I have to have a cold house now.
Yeah, like electric companies are horrible. Because when we were living in our other house, they would charge us like an absorbent amount for stuff, and they always said that like it was just for estimates. Like there would be like over $1,000 electric bills, and we were not doing that. Yeah. And we had a lot of like probably like 5 or 6 of those, and then eventually, when we moved out, we were like, I looked at everything and said, oh, it's just because they were estimating us. They were like estimating way above what we were using. So I did that. I got on the phone with them and they were like, oh, sorry. Yeah, we've been overestimating how much you've been using. And I was like, yeah, no bleep. Like, thanks for that, jackhole. And then so eventually they like forgave. And then they gave us like a pretty big check back when we moved. But
you're darn right, they should have.
It's just awful people. Yeah.
It just, yeah, it was definitely a frustrating way to end the week.
Taking my money. Yeah.
And it's like, I felt bad too, because the person on the phone is not the one who's responsible. They're just the customer service person, and like want to be mad at them, but it's not them. And you could tell she had been fielding these type of calls all day. And I still wrote, she was like, did I address your concerns? And I just like sighed and I'm like, no, but you answered my question. And she didn't know what to do with that. She's like, so is that a yes or a no? And I just had to be like,
I don't know myself.
Yes. Like, just because I could tell they were probably recording and things, and I didn't want her to get in trouble. And so that was like the only kind of low spot for the week. And that was like, but everything else was good. It's good. Got to see a lot of people, spend a lot of time with people. So overall, glad to have a good weekend. Yeah.
So not too much happened. It kind of was the same old hat type stuff. Taking care of the kids, doing the house stuff, babysitting, cleaning. Did a couple applications. I moved on to background checks for one job. I'm not going to say it yet because it's not set in stone. Let's just pray that I can get this job. And last weekend, Claire had off, which was nice. She was off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we had a nice family weekend. We kind of relaxed and cleaned and watched things and just had a good weekend. We've been doing this thing with budgeting that's been very helpful. So we've actually been using cash for like a lot of stuff, and it's really helping us like be mindful of our spending. So like recently for groceries, we've been trying to spend $100 a week. And so what we do at the start of we've done this last month, and we're gonna do it this month. We just took out $500 cash and just said this is what we're using for groceries for the month. And because what we find is like oftentimes we just spend way too much on groceries. It's like a crazy amount of money, and we're realizing that like we really don't even need $100 a week on groceries. Like we've just been spending so much more and wasting food and all this stuff. You know, buying tons of vegetables and tons of fruit, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, $60 worth, and it just goes bad, you know.
Yeah.
So we've been very mindful of that, and it's been great. Like we were saving a lot more on that, on groceries especially, and we've been using for gas too, and which is good. Trying to, we're, the goal is to like not even have a credit card. Like it'd be so cool just to write checks and to use our debit card for stuff. So that's where we're trying to make that happen. But but it's good. Things are good.
As a former finance person, I support that strategy. That's actually something they told us to do, like in personal finance too, like envelopes, like with cash to like help you budget. So.
And it works.
Yeah. I try at least to only use my debit card for things unless it's online. Like just like it's using the credit card, you just don't realize how things stack up so quick.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you don't see it. It's not like it's a tangible thing, so you're assuming it's endless, you know.
Yeah. And at least with debit cards, it's usually even just taken out immediately. Like
Mm-hmm.
credit cards, it's not even posted usually till like a day later.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
So it's been going good.
cool.
So that was my week. I didn't really do too much. just been applying jobs, taking care of the kids, doing house things, and trying to spend less on groceries.
That's
Living.
I mean, hey man, but seriously though, that's
Living in
like,
moderation. That's good.
Yeah.
You're doing the
Joe,
important
go.
things.
Go, Joe, go. Go, Joe, go.
G.I. Joe.
Nothing too big other than coaching, which has been great. Seeing a lot of kids grow. I'm a swim coach for anybody who's listening for the first time, and seeing like these kids grow for a sport that they've never been exposed to before this year. It's very humbling and very rewarding. Another thing over. I know that the Phillies had Philadelphia Eagles. Had their game on Sunday, I believe. But I ended up going to Philly the day before because I saw on Craigslist a awesome guitar pedal that I had been searching around for the last month or so, and I noticed that it was in mint condition. They usually go for about $400, but the guy was selling it for half off. And I was like, I would gladly make the 4-hour drive for this. So I did.
Whoa.
I just drove to Philly for a half hour's worth of whatever, grabbed a coffee and then drove right back.
How much did that cost you in gas?
Not much, $30.
Yeah.
It was easy. And I only encountered out of the 8 hours of driving in total 10 minutes of traffic. It was great.
Wow.
And that was going into Philly. Like people were saying, like, you're probably going to encounter like all this football traffic. Nope.
I mean, I feel like not as much the day before.
Oh no, they got to prepare because they were hosting.
I know, but still, I mean, like most people are not going to show up for the game until 3 o'clock on or 12 noon on Sunday. Because
let me over exaggerate.
You may just so 10 minutes is an over exaggeration.
It sounded good enough, but no, 10 minutes. I was so. Something about Philadelphia drivers, though, that I've noticed. They either go into your lane without, of course, signaling, or they'll signal, but then just immediately go, regardless of you being next to them or not. So that's
just a Philly driver thing. I feel like that's just a city driver thing.
Oh, it was right before the city. So not technically the city.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know.
The longer I've been alive, the more I realize that most people are bad drivers.
Yeah.
It's not a state thing. It's just a people thing.
Well, I mean, New York, I experience horrible drivers all the time.
I gotta tell you, the Hudson Parkway before New York, that sucked. Coming back.
There's a lot that's in New York that's terrible.
Yeah. So
you either lack driving skills or self-awareness. One of the two. Or both.
Or both. And then the next day I went out with my girlfriend.
Your girlfriend?
My girlfriend. Sorry, my yeah, but we just kept it low key. Went on a little hike. Went out to the Cheesecake Factory, which was awesome. Did not get any cheesecake this time around, which I know it's blasphemy, but still, whatever. And yeah, that was my week. So what we want you all to do right now is please subscribe to Seizing Valor. This is a YouTube channel, and also follow us on Spotify, please. We would love to have you guys check us out on that medium, but we are also on Instagram. You guys get to see extra content that we do put out there on occasion. And in addition to that, which can boost us in the algorithm, please comment on our videos and like our videos as well. And our posts too on Instagram. It definitely boosts us in the algorithm, and when we do share things, our videos and our episodes in total are shared every Monday at 4 a.m. I should say, to help you out with your morning commute. If you guys have any comments or questions that you want to keep a little bit more private, or you want to spark a little bit more discussion, please email us at seizingvalor@gmail.com. Again, that's seizingvalor@gmail.com. We love you. Be a light. and we will see you all next time. Let's pray it out.
And Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for today, for the blessings that you've given us. I just pray that you enlighten us in this time, that through this full discussion, that we can go away from this in a mode of reflection as we see where the stains of greed and pride have impacted us and impacted those around us, or impacted our relationship with you. I just pray for an increase in the virtues of charity and humility, knowing to that way we can combat these sins that have affected us, and yeah, just for the courage to do what we need to do, and for the ability to discern your will in all things, especially in the decisions that impact those around us in our relationship with you. Most precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you all for attending, and we will all see you next week for episode 2 of this series. Take care.